Hi, everyone. We're going to give people a moment to get logged in and then we'll get started. Welcome to everyone who's coming in. We're going to get started as soon as it looks like we have most of the group here. Okay, the numbers are starting to slow down. I think we have most of our participants. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Graziosi, and I serve on the committee of the SACAC webinars team. I am joined by co-chair Christina, who is doing the behind the scenes work for the webinar. So if you have any technical questions during the presentation, know that Christina will be monitoring the chat box and should be able to assist you. We welcome you to today's webinar session, How to Guide the School Profile. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. This is a webinar format, so the audience mics are muted. We encourage you to use the question and answer box if you have questions for the presenters. And if time allows, we will have a chance for them to answer at the end. This meeting is also being recorded and will later be shared with SACAC members on your portal. Thank you again for joining us today. And now I will pass things over to our session presenters.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iris Martinez. I am the Director of College and Career Services at Christopher Columbus High School in Miami, Florida. Prior to being at Christopher Columbus, I was actually at the University of Miami for over 7 years, where I was part of the application committee and I oversaw our admission readers. So hence why this is a passion of mine, from giving that perspective from the other side of the desk. Unfortunately, today one of our co-presenters, Eleni Garcia, was not able to join us, but she definitely worked very hard on the presentation as well. And with us also today, we have Dr. Conley.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Conley, and I'm excited to join the conversation about school profiles today. I currently lead our school department, our school counseling program at North Oconee High School, and that's located in Bogart, Georgia. I'm also excited to recognize that I work alongside 3 other school counselors, and we do college advising as well as other counseling services for our school. It's a comprehensive public high school with over 1,500 students. The school profile has definitely been an ever-evolving conversation on our campus and our counseling office, and it appears we are not alone with that, with the number of participants that have signed up today. So without further ado, we want to kick off what our presentation is about with a quick review of the topics we're going to cover today in our discussion. This discussion will begin with a quick description of what is a school report, school profile, and the role that each document plays in the application process. We then want to go through some tough challenges, questions, things that might come up as you create or adjust your school profile, and how to address those difficulties when you are creating those documents. School profiles are vital to creating a comprehensive profile for your student as well as your school for the college process. And our hope is that today we can convey the many reasons as to why a school profile should be a critical document that is reviewed and edited every year. Iris is then going to share some insightful information on some of the trends that she's seeing in regards to school profiles and the information that colleges are seeking when they're reviewing a profile. And then my favorite component of a presentation are definitely the takeaways. And we hope that you'll find the information presented today useful and find ways to implement new ideas and strategies when updating your school profile. And lastly, but not leastly, we will leave time for questions at the end of our session. So we want to cover in our first slide and want to define and highlight 2 very important but different documents that should accompany most high school transcripts. And the first one is the school report. What is a school report? Why does it matter so much in the admissions process? And the most common school report are the ones that we find in the Common Application or through a platform like SCORE. The school report shares many similarities to a school profile and does require some similar information to be shared. But there is one difference to highlight, and that's that the school report format is selected by another entity, such as the Common App and SCORE, and they ask specific questions in their format that they prefer. The school profile is the information that you as a school want to provide, and that can be adjusted to a format that best fits your school preference. The school report form is typically completed by a school counselor or a college counselor at a high school. It typically includes your transcript, letters of recommendation, the high school's academic information, general terms are usually included as well, and that helps the reader understand how the student compares to others in their class. This document serves as an avenue for colleges to learn more about the student academically and personally from the school standpoint in a standardized way, as all students are submitting a school report for that school. This document also serves as a key starting point in the review of students in the context of their school and in comparison to their peers. Whereas high school profiles are useful tools for college admission officers and prospective students and families to interpret and understand general information about your school. The school profile is typically in a PDF version, typically 2 pages long, or is suggested to be. We have not mastered that yet at my school. And it's typically created and updated by a high school official. It can be uploaded on many application platforms, such as the Common App, or sent with a transcript via other means. The school profile is also specific to your school, whereas this transcript and school report is specific to the individual student. So many U.S. universities use the school profile to better understand what is the context of your school, what are your specific graduation requirements, what is the rigor. When you say rigor at your school, what does that look like? What kind of opportunities are available? What is your students' performance in context with the peers that they are attending school with? What does the academic records from your school look like? Readers can then evaluate and determine students' accomplishments within the academic and social context of the opportunities that are available to them at that school. We found, as I was coming to North Oconee, I've been here, I think this is my 17th year, but when I first came, we were a new school. I came the second year it was open. And so we realized that our school profile was especially important to schools that were new and definitely new to a college's radar. So if you have students that are applying to different schools than have been on your radar in the past, it's really important to make sure you're sending that school profile along with your school report and transcript, both of those documents. And again, if your brand is changing, if your school's demographics are changing, if you're looking to focus on different things, you definitely want to make sure you're updating that school profile and sending that when you send the school report and transcripts. Next, we're going to delve further into the school profile throughout the presentation, but wanted to take a moment to describe both those documents so that we could further dissect the pieces throughout the presentation.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Christy. So now, in terms of challenges, the school report, if counselors are just sending the school report, which is that preset form from the Common Application, there are limitations with that in it of itself, simply because it's a template that doesn't include, it's not inclusive of all the many curriculum options. Like, for example, as you see on the picture there, you see AP, you see IB, you see honors, and you see Cambridge. But what about college prep? What about dual enrollment? What about advanced topics, depending on your particular school? Also, another challenge with the school report is the inconsistency in reported information. And I'm going to give you an example of that in the next slide, but counselors oftentimes are submitting an incomplete school report and or an outdated school profile. Also, from the other side of the desk, the admission side, we've seen counselors not completing the secondary school report and or not even submitting the school profile. So there's really no context to that transcript. Two, school reports are oftentimes being replaced by the school profile, but the school report, as you could see, the templates are very limited. So you don't really have the opportunity to explain and really dive into the different specifics about, your specifics about your curriculum. what are the limitations that a student can take in terms of advanced level courses. This is the example that I wanted to share. I got this was while I was a reader. I reviewed this file. It was the same school, two different counselors submitting the same, school report on behalf of their student. You'll see that obviously the class size varies, not by much, but it does vary. Sometimes depending on that school, that might have an impact or it might not. You don't want to leave that room for assumption. You could also see here for the curriculum, you'll see that for APs, they offer 20 at the top, but there's no limit. And then they offer, I believe, 55, and there's a limit of 7. But how do you know if that 7, the 7 courses that students are limited to, it's not every year or in the total of their 4 years of high school? And if you notice the bottom one for that same school, it gave me the same limit, but it gave me less courses. And it did give me a limit for the AP. So you have to, as an admission officer and readers on the other side of the desk, they have to really dissect this and kind of solve the puzzles. We don't want them to do that because they're receiving tons of applications, a high volume of applications. So, and they're moving through them very quickly, right? We really don't want to leave room for assumption. And, at the end of the day, we want to serve our students, which is why the school profile is so important.
Yes. So you heard us mention that one of the main reasons that a school profile is so important, that it provides context and valuable information about your school. We want you to be intentional with what you promote. Just like when we talk to students, we ask them to be mindful of what they're highlighting in their applications. Schools should be intentional about what they're giving space to on their school profile. We think about ours in terms of real estate. What do we want to promote and highlight and use that space wisely so that we are selling our school's best assets?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Christy, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So think of the school report and the school profile to serve as both an academic and personal snapshot of that student's application. And that could definitely be a crucial point for admission officers in assessing their candidacy for admission, establishing that context that schools are really trying to hone in and focus on, because that's like curriculum, as you all know, is one of the most important factors in the admission process, especially now when we're moving towards a test optional kind of world. So they're not going to have that testing component. So they're really going to focus in on the curriculum. So we really want to make sure that you have that opportunity, ability to provide the additional context that's needed. Now, I want to touch upon some trends. So being on this side of the desk, I've been seeing some institutions, for example, Berkeley in California, they sent out a survey at the beginning of last year asking counselors to go ahead and fill out, a series of questions. As you can see here, they're asking, first name, last name, the title, information, obviously basic information about the school, the location, providing some context, right? Some environmental context that could possibly play a role in the type of curriculum and opportunities that are available for the students on there that attend that school. Then it's going to go a little deeper into, are, counseling appointments happening, are they mandatory for students, right? Do they happen at least once a year? Does your school have a designated college counselor? Oftentimes we're juggling, if you're in a public school, you're juggling the entire student body. And then if you're in a much, in a private school, much smaller school, you have your small load type of schedule, right? The school term, grading scale, if you rank students, which is also important. As you can see here, they're asking very specific questions. Some of them are required, some of them are not required in order for you to be able to complete, and submit your response. And they're focusing primarily on the composition and the DNA of the school, right? You could see here, first gen students, how many are there on financial aid, or, free and reduced lunch, what is the percentage of the students going to community college versus four-year institutions. This one's key, right? What is the highest math level course offered? What is the highest science course offered? What is the total number of foreign language courses offered? Does your school offer any of these following courses? And then here you also see in terms of like extracurricular activities, you're also going to see our students restricted from participating in too many clubs or organizations. Does your school offer any special programs? And on here, this is where, counselors have the opportunity to truly explain about going depth into the curriculum. I'll talk about Christopher Columbus, for example. We have a signatures honors program where students are admitted to at the time of admission in 9th grade. Those students have unlimited freedom and academic flexibility in terms of taking all the AP courses that we offered. Although we don't limit the courses that we offer, that our students are able to take, that group of students is able to take, how many AP courses that they can kind of take on. Now, the other population of students that are not part of that signature honors program, while they have the ability to sign up for one of those courses, there's a process in place, right? So it is my job as a counselor to explain what that process is so that my students are giving the same chance, right? Especially if a student transferred in junior year or sophomore year. So these are things that we want to make sure that we take into account and into consideration when providing that context to the institutions, because remember, all of our students are being compared within the context of our individual high schools eventually. So we don't want to kind of pin one student over another. You also see here what type of barriers are present towards students in the school and in the community. Help us, understand, provide any additional context. So again, they're really trying to go in and have an understanding of the school. This is one of the trends that I'm seeing more and more of schools ahead in anticipation of reading season when it starts, having a database with all of the schools and the school's profile, but not just the school profile document that we kind of share, but even further than the school profile, because there are some schools that I'll share with you. We have two profiles here at Christopher Columbus. We have the promotional piece that we use for admission purposes and recruiting students for Columbus. And then we have a profile that I send specifically to colleges. Thankfully, I have that flexibility, but some schools don't have that. I've asked around some colleagues as well in the profession, and I've asked them if a school doesn't have that flexibility to really edit the profile, will you accept an addendum? And all of them said yes, of course. The more context that we have, the better. So if you're limited in terms of what you could put in your profile, create your addendum. And it really doesn't matter how it looks as long as you're providing the information.
So Iris, you did a great job talking about curriculum and how that can play such a role in your school profile. And you definitely want to plug your specific programs and specific curriculum. So you mentioned your school. We also have a rotational basis for some of our APs on our campus. And so we share through ours how some students have to adjust their schedule, really plan ahead of what they take when, so that they can accommodate having that specific AP that they're interested in taking, or certain higher level advanced course that might be on a rotational basis. So you want to highlight those and make sure you draw attention to that. So maybe the reader of the application can be aware as to why that student might be taking things in a different sequence, or why their transcript might look a little different than some of the others. Also sharing and talking about whether students have open access or whether things are regulated based on previous grades, teacher recommendation. Are there any restrictions, or is it, total freedom for students to sign up for what they want, kind of in the direction that they want to, the level that they want to. You also want to highlight your dual enrollment partnerships. This is a great example of the different partnerships that a school had. They've listed some below. I know for us, we have partnerships for certain courses, and so we highlight that as well. So we do offer Georgia Tech dual enrollment for math only. And so we do list that is specific only to math so that they are aware that there are not other courses that are available for our students on our profile. AP Capstone is a great course to also highlight and share that maybe that is a above and beyond class for students, and why is that class considered above and beyond on your campus. Also just sharing if maybe it's not a normal class that can be perceived as above and beyond, noting that as well. Maybe you have a teacher that is really an expert in an area, and so you want to magnify that is a stellar class, but also a highly rigorous class. And maybe that deserves some space on your school profile to talk about why that class should get a little higher mark than what normally would be when they look at your student's transcript. And then also the discussion of class rank. We've included a sample of what a school has put before in regards to class rank. So whether you are sharing that you have a class rank or that you do not, it's good to have a statement ready to share with colleges in your community about your ranking practices.
So on here, these are other ways, right, that we find, one second here, there we go. On here, these are other ways that we've seen, particularly for this profile. You'll find it also in NAGAC, and we'll share some of the resources at the end. But for this particular school, they moved from AP to advanced topics, right? And they needed to let us know here, you know, for at the admission office, they needed to let us know. So they really went ahead and explained when they changed, and that just because they did not offer AP courses, they have the advanced topics, which are taught at the same or even higher level. Also, in terms of AP exams, if you offer AP exams on your high school, you know, you want to make sure that you explain what courses are available. Here, in this particular school, they only offer a set number of AP courses, AP exams for students to take. And then there's another profile at the bottom that we kind of put a little snippet there. You'll see that the school, Pinecrest, this is actually here in South Florida. They offer 17 post AP seminars courses, which are taught at levels beyond the AP curriculum. So if we noted those if we see those noted on the transcript, the admission officer reviewing should consider them, you know, at equal weight for the students when reviewing. They also have that special program, right? That science research program. And they explain how that program works from 9th all the way through 12th grade. So as you can see, like, again, it's going to differ and vary based on your particular school and what, you know, the intricacies are in terms of the curriculum or any other special programs.
And so moving into this slide, thinking about your school culture, I think every high school has their own vibe, culture, practice that they live with when they're advising their students academically, work-life balance. What is kind of the trends that you see on your campus, and how do you translate that into a school profile? So there's a statement included that the school has added to their profile to help the college to see, you know, how do they advise their students? How do they help them with course selection? And what's important to their school's culture and belief system? So I think if that is a part of your school, you definitely want to relate that on your school profile so that the reader is aware that that's something that your school believes in very strongly and is part of the decision-making process. On a previous slide, we also shared a statement about school rank, and here's a follow-up statement that provides even more context to the reader, and it gives information about your weighting practices for in-house classes as well as for students that have transferred into the school. So this is a more detailed explanation of how information can really matter when reviewing a student's file in regards to class ranking and your grading system.
And then two, you'll note that at the very bottom, you know, it says students may enroll in a limited number of courses through one schoolhouse, which is like an online school. So if there's virtual schools and is a virtual school that your students are participating with, or there's a partnership, but that notation will not be on the transcript, you know, you let them know, right? So again, goes back to what is it that your students are taking, what are they participating in terms of dual enrollment, their curriculum offered at their school, or anything other outside of dual enrollment, such as online courses. Now here, you'll see finally from words, right? We're moving along to some pictures and graphs. This is another way to showcase the grading scale. You saw in the previous slide, the grading scale, which is highlighted, like written down. On here, you'll see just an actual graph. If your grading scale differs from the traditional, 90 to 100 is an A, then you want to make sure that you definitely include it. You'll see at the bottom, it says class rank. We do not rank our students. Like, you want to make sure that you share whether you rank or you don't rank. Don't have the readers kind of skimming and finding, okay, do you have this information? Yes or no? So just include it. There's also GPA distribution of the students specific to that senior class, which could also kind of present a picture of the type of students graduating that year in terms of their grades and how that is distributed all across. Now, this one in particular, graphics are great. I remember as a reader on the other side of the desk, I loved graphics, and my counterparts also love graphics. This particular graphic is very unique because this is actually a school that's whose mascot is a bee, right? So you'll see the reference to the honeycomb on here, but they included the middle 50% of SAT for the students, the ACT, the SAT, class size, which is big. Okay, well, how big is your senior class? And then just additional kind of like, hey, how many students participate in service, national merit, finalists, and national merit commended, wherever it is that they participate in, whether it's posse, how many posse finalists you have, etc. Right? You want to brag, but essentially keeping in mind that what is it that's going to add context to your students that particular year. Okay, that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. We don't want to give too much information that is just very overwhelming, that may not necessarily directly affect the student's decision. Just think about what is going to support that decision or that admission review in terms of context. Like, what is it going to have a direct impact? Class size has a direct impact. I want to show them the average SAT scores for this for this class, because they're being compared towards, against each other, right, within the school. So just kind of always have that in mind when you're kind of entering and writing stuff and seeing what to deciding what to include or not on the school profile. And here you'll see there's a little asterisk. Due to COVID-19, the class of 21 has had limited testing opportunities compared to previous years. These scores represent a 3-year average, which, Christy, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it just right now, nip it in the butt. But essentially now for COVID, now that we've been, away, we're kind of moving away from the COVID times, and, there's more testing available, etc. Classes are in person, do you write a COVID statement, right, on your profile for the following year? And I think that's going to depend on the school. If you ask me, I am going to include a COVID statement for my profile this upcoming year. And it's obviously going to be different from last year because we're not remote learning, but I will kind of shed some light and I guess to serve as a reminder to the admission officers and those readers that this class was out of school, technically, like in person, for 2+ years. And those were the crucial years where they have that opportunity to build on things, right? So on their activities section, you may not see 9th and 10th and, or 10th and 11th grade. You may not see 9th, 10th, and 11th, right? Involvement, because they were outside. We were shut down when they were earlier in their time in high school. So I want to kind of shed that light, because I think that will have an effect and an impact on their admission review and what our students write on their application. Christy, anything you want to share on that?
I did want to mention, just because I work in a traditional public school, we are going to add to our graphics this year when we list how many students are on our caseload, just to give context to the reader of how many students we're advising. And that was something that was advised to us by a college rep that reads our profile, that they thought that would be helpful for a reader to know how many students we are working with.
Yeah, so again, anything that you think is gonna add value, especially like with that caseload question and kind of plug that you add there, it will provide context. So we will not probably receive a counselor letter of recommendation for each of these students, right? But then, okay, hopefully let's see if we could get a teacher letter. So all of that information, I promise you, it's going to be helpful in the review process.
Yes. And this, to me, is the real meat of your school profile, really what you want to emphasize and make sure is up to date. I know that in many schools, sometimes classes can change, curriculums can have different titles, but you really want to make sure that this part of your profile matches what's going to be on your transcript. As a counselor, I review all the transcripts for my new students that are coming in, and there are multitudes of ways that people say things and put things on their transcripts. And so I get confused, and I don't even have the volume to review that a college rep would have to. So it's really helped us to realize how specific we need to be in our profile of what are we titling honors? What does that mean within our building? What does advanced placement mean? What are any other like significant designations? We do advanced courses and accelerated courses. How does that differ? So making sure you're very clear, brief but clear about what those titles can mean on a transcript. And also just making sure that you are noting what your most rigorous courses are that are being offered. And so again, if it doesn't have the AP, IB, or dual enrollment title, that you are making a note somewhere that that is an advanced course, a higher level than what a traditional or on-level class would be. And so I think we struggled with trying to decide what some of those classes would be for a little while, but after having many conversations with our department chairs and with our administration, we have, I think, finalized what our course listings look like. And I would say too, that you need a committee when you're working on your school profile. It's not definitely something that you want to do in a silo, because it was really interesting to hear our teachers' perspectives and department chair perspectives of what they consider to be more rigorous and why they felt that way, which helped us in our explanation. So definitely use the people that are knowledgeable in your building. And if you do change curriculums, don't forget to list them in your column so that they don't get missed when a rep is reading your transcript and then going to look at the profile and the course is not there. And then I would also say, making sure that your documents mirror with what you're also sending on the school report. So your transcript, your school profile, and your school report should all have similar language.
Yeah, so thinking about supplementing the transcript, right? When you're kind of crafting that school profile, what can I write here that's going to add to the transcript? Okay, the school profile should serve as a key, as a legend, especially if the transcripts are difficult to either manipulate, because, you know, for example, I can't add certain things to the transcript even if I wanted to. It's like a preset. So if you really don't have much kind of leeway in manipulating the transcript in terms of like what you can add and what not, right, then you do so on the school profile. This is another way that you could list school offerings. As you can see at the top, they'll list, hey, these courses were not offered, these courses were new, course title prior to a, you know, advanced topic curriculum. This is a single semester course, and they group them based on subject, right? Subject requirements. I did see a question in the chat that asked, and again, putting the your school offerings can take a lot of space. Yes, I understand. But one of the questions that we received in the chat was, can I include a link, right? Yes, you can. Yes, I use links when I was a reader. I love them because I didn't have to like stop what I was doing to then Google, okay, let me look at the school. Let me see if I find the course bulletin and read, but maybe I find the outdated one. You don't know what I'm going to find. You can't control that, right? Maybe it's two schools that have the same name and then you use the wrong schools, right? So think about the process of the readers on the back end. There's initial readers, right? That maybe admission experts, or, they're retired, or maybe they're, whatever the case may be, just think about it. We want to provide them with as much information as possible because they have a high volume of applications and documents that they're processing. So yes, include a hyperlink if you're not able to include your whole list of course offerings, but not only just here's our hyperlink to my course offerings, include what is the highest math level, what is the highest science level, what is the highest, like just basic information, and then lead them elsewhere for additional information. Okay. Now, here are our 7 quick tips that we have. Christy, you want to go ahead and get started on these?
Sure. So basically, some of this information we've already kind of talked about, making sure that you list any restrictions, the frequency of your course offerings, if there's rotations, if there's certain approvals, certain things they have to check off their list to be able to do certain classes. You want to make sure that you highlight that and make very clear what that looks like. If you limit the number of rigor that they have, or if that's unlimited, just want to make sure that that's documented within your profile and your documents that you're sending to the schools.
Then here we also have, like, make sure that if the school profile that your school is giving out to, prospective students interested in coming to your particular schools, that, that you change it. And if you can't change it, like I said earlier, just send that addendum, okay, with that information, and just make sure that you communicate with your entire office if you have a team, so that you guys are doing the same thing all across, not just one counselor sending the addendum for that particular caseload, but you all are communicating. Then also here we have, like, including a link in your course bulletin for further information. So yes, using headings, bold font, bullet points to highlight and emphasize. Graphics are great too. Just think about it. They're reading tons of documents. Let's make it easy for them to find that information. Definitely share any relevant, updates, remote learning, pass, fail grading, right? If you had, especially this particular class, if you pass, fail, it's going to be noted on the transcript for one particular year or 2 years. Make sure you explain that. And then also we have here, making it accessible on the counseling website page and your NACAC. And with this, I actually got this feedback because I personally don't have my school profile on the college counseling page on the website, simply because since we have 2 profiles, we only list on the main page the promotional piece. But if you're able to add it to your page, it's easy for admission reps to just go to your counseling page and access it there. NACAC, if you want examples of school profiles, NACAC actually has a section on their website where you could find sample school profiles that schools submit. So go ahead and submit yours, right? So that we could share. And then keep in mind that it doesn't have to be fancy or long, as long as you're giving the admission officers the information that is truly needed to make that admission decision. Oftentimes, we kind of like forget, and we're like, okay, because we're living the day-to-day, we have our big caseload, so we just like, all right, this is what they need. No, we're gonna take a step back and reflect. Would a reader, someone who doesn't know our school, someone who's not familiar with our school, understand this, right? Can they read the transcript and have an understanding of the limitations and whatnot? As you all know, admission has a big turnover, right? Admissions has big turnover. So your admission rep from last year might not be the same for this year. So you have to kind of start that relationship again, and you have to kind of teach them about your particular school. So making it easy for them, I think that will always go a long way.
I agree. And another topic or idea that we have used in our office is when the reps do come in, if there's like a lull between when the students come, we ask them to look at our profile just to give us some feedback, or we give them a copy. That way they have one in hand so that they have access to it. And then it gives us great feedback of what they were looking for that they didn't see, or maybe things that we should put in a bigger font or highlight and amplify, and some things that we might want to downplay a little more and give room for those other things. So just make sure you're using your resources as you have connections and time to interact with people on both sides of the desk. You can take advantage of that to help your profile.
And let's see here. We are going to go ahead and share this in the chat. This is a sample profile that you could, use as a guide if you are just getting started, or if you kind of want to redefine yours. We want to go ahead and kind of like go over the questions and answer any questions that you all have. I see here, yes, we are going to send we're uploading the session, right? The recording to SACAC. So you're gonna have access to the presentation once we finish on the SACAC website. I see here, what about college acceptance and matriculation list? I was very big on this. And again, my counterparts, my colleagues, we've spoken, and honestly, a school does not need to know where your students have been admitted to in the past, because if you really think about it, that really has no direct impact on the admission review process, right? That was the past applicant pool. You don't know, that was that year. Now we're looking at this year right now. So that really has no effect whatsoever in an admission decision. So like my colleague said, use that real estate wisely. And that's something that I would not include in the profile. And let's see what else we have here. So someone's asking, should we list retired courses on the school profile? Courses that may still appear on a student's transcript, but are no longer offered at the school. Sure, like within the context, right? Just think about, are the majority of the students going to have that retired course? Yes or no, right? And then see how you kind of word it and say, hey, these are a list of courses that you may see on your transcripts that were discontinued or retired on this year, right? And then you kind of like have that there provided for the students. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, Christy, someone's asking something related to what you mentioned about highlighting your caseload. And this person is asking, when should you highlight your caseload assignment on your school profile? What amounts?
I think what we're going to do is where you list on your profile at the beginning, like who your administration are in your building, and then your counselors, we're going to put our full caseload in a parentheses, and then our senior caseload in another parentheses, and have that like a little star noted at the bottom, what the first set of numbers are for, and then the second set of numbers, just to give context. Like my senior caseload, I have a little over 100, but my overall caseload is 400. So when you hear 100, you're like, oh, yes, that's a lot. But then when you hear 400, that does add a different layer of things to it. So we felt like both of those numbers were important.
Thank you for that, Christy. Question that we just received, should we, let's see, we will out the school report they will upload, I'm assuming, the school report in SCORE and in the Common App, or is it okay just to send it through SCORE? I'm trying to see. So this is, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little long to kind of process. So for this in my school, what we're doing is, yes, we don't use SCORE. We use another platform called Cialfo. And on Cialfo, I kind of fill out the school report section. But then I also upload our school profile, right? So we send both. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. We send both. And then if I see that there's a question that I'm not able to answer because it's like one of those preset, I will leave blank, and I will make sure that that's the first thing at the top of my profile that the readers are going to refer to, simply because it was left blank, right? We don't know, like on our side of the desk, on the college side on the high school side of the desk, I'm sorry, we don't know how they're pulling information, right? Do they just like download information directly from the Common App, right? And that's how they assess. Are they we don't know if they read in school groups. We don't know if they refer to the transcript first or the application first. We have no idea, right? So the more information that we provide from all whatever angles, the better. We just have to make sure that in doing so, we're being consistent and we're being very intentional in the type of information that we're providing, that we for sure believe based on your knowledge of your school, your students, and your parameters within your curriculum, that you are being intentional in what you provide to them. So I hopefully that does make sense. Any other questions? We will send this in the chat. Let me see. I want to make sure that we send it in the chat so that you guys have an ability, you know, have the ability to check out the sample profile online. We just go ahead and put it in the chat there. Okay, we have a question right here. Do you think an explanation of honor code or academic integrity policy should be included, or is that mostly assumed? That's a great question. I think it depends on what that is in your school. The less room for assumption, the better. If you think that your school is a little bit more, it's traditional, but they kind of take it a little step further. Maybe you kind of want to explain whether you're able to provide, to disclose that information or not disclose that information, and whatnot. So I wouldn't want you to just copy paste, your honor code, right, your academic integrity policy, all of it for an admission officer to read, but whatever is relevant. Okay, so always ask the question. Always, whenever you're in doubt of what to ask or not to ask, what to add or not to add, always ask yourself, will this impact the admission decision of our students? Okay. 2, another thing that you can do is reach out to your admission officers, right? Of maybe your top feeder schools, right? Think about what are the schools, the most popular schools that your students are applying to, and reach out to, to the admission officer and ask them, hey, can you take a look at our profile? We're revamping it. What do you think? Do you need more information? Any feedback? We would appreciate it. I promise you, they're going to give you feedback. While I was on the other side, and still to this day on this side of the desk, I have colleagues sending me profiles, and it's a different perspective, different set of eyes. Hey, include the class size, put it bigger, put it on this side. You're not clear about this. So use the admission officers as a resource. They will be the ones to also provide you with keys specifically for those particular schools. They'll try to be general, but it's something that they believe that needs to be on. They will let you know, or if they believe that it doesn't need to be on, trust me, we will be very candid and we will also let you know. Let's see. So I have a question here. As a reader, what was the first immediate thing you wanted to see in the school profile when reading student applications? Or was that depending on each student? That's such a great question. Again, it depends on, because there's days that I read by school group, but there were limitations by reading, in a school group. Not all your students submit the application at the same time. So it's very difficult to read by school groups, right? You don't want to wait until after November 1 to start reading applications, because then you're never going to finish. I'm trying to think. There's days that I would open, the application first, and I read the application. But when I did open and I reviewed the profile, I wanted to see how many seniors. I was interested in curriculum. And that's why we kind of focus a lot on curriculum. We always talk about curriculum here, because that's one thing I failed to see among the profiles that I received. Like, it's not a one size fits all for all your students. So how does that happen? How does it all happen? How will you handle a student who's a transfer student and you have you're an IB school? Where do they come in? Like, is there a process for them, right? So I always try to see how I wanted to see how inclusive the profile was towards all their students, all the different types of students. So I really wanted to make sure that I was looking at class size was big, any curriculum limitations and processes that you need signatures to be in advanced level courses, that you limit the advanced level courses that the students could take. So really, it just focused more on curriculum. I know long-winded answer to your question. Let's see, what's the most appropriate way to navigate what to show colleges in a school that does not formally rank? We don't formally rank, all right? So on my profile, I say we do not rank because I believe it does greater good for the majority of our student populations, right? I saw on now with that being said, on my side of the desk, like on the college side, when I was reviewing schools that didn't formally rank, I would see on the school report, when you fill out the school report for each individual student, it would ask you, does this student share GPAs, right? What is the highest GPA in the class? You enter it and you more or less have an idea who are your top 10, top 20, top students. So that we could infer very easily without you having to specifically, say, hey, we do not rank, but we kind of have a rank. We have a top 1 student, top 2 valedictorian, salutatorian. All right. I think hopefully that, we see a lot of questions being, put up. Please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions that we don't get to online, like via email. So feel free to reach out via email. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'm happy to answer and kind of like answer any additional questions in offline if there are any additional questions that keep coming in. There we go. Sending my email just in case we didn't get to your questions. We definitely want to be mindful of everyone's time and we're very appreciative of you all joining us. Let me see if I could get one more question in here today. Let's see. How critical is it to be consistent from year to year with which grade ranges are reported for schools that don't rank? I always make the same ranges, and how many students fall into these? You don't have to be consistent. So if I understand correctly, the question, you don't have to be consistent in year to year, because every year your students are going to change. Like that class is going to be different from the year prior, so on and so forth. So if the ranges do change because of the students and their grades, then yeah, by all means, provide that information, share that. But I think it's going to vary by class. Hopefully that answers that question. If at all, can we help? Oh gosh, this is such a great question. How, if at all, can we help best showcase students who have transferred to our school in junior or senior year from another high school using a school profile? Boy, imagine if you only had 2 students, then you would kind of individually email those schools that they're, applying to. But I would try to find a way to see if you could have an addendum added with the list of those students that transferred, and say, hey, these students transferred either junior or senior year, therefore you won't see their transcripts being a true reflection of their potential, academic potential, because they were limited in the courses that they could take, given that they had transfer. And I would just add that to the addendum, so as a reader, I would kind of like just, oh, wow, there's transfer kids. Even if they're not going to directly look at each student one by one, that's going to be taken into consideration when doing that assessment and that review. Like, oh my God, yes, out of this school had X number of transfer students. So see if that's something that you can provide.
Okay, thank you. There's maybe a couple more questions, but Iris put her email in the chat. Go ahead and get it if your question wasn't answered. We're at the end of our time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar today. And we also want to thank Revolution Prep for sponsoring today's session. A special thank you to our presenters, Dr. Christy Conley and Iris Martinez, for leading this timely session. Please be on the lookout for SACAC announcements about upcoming webinars coming soon. Have a great day.